Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our meeting of the Foundation Board number 34. Before anything else, we have to wish Funke a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Funke. After that, we will go on to a traditional Canadian part of opening a meeting is to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional and unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka at a place called Tiohtià:ke, a meeting place for many of the First Nations, including the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Algonquin peoples. The next item of business is to ask if anybody needs to declare a conflict of interest for today's meeting. Seeing none, we can go straight into our agenda. And our first item is a foundation update. Chris, over to you.
Thank you very much. Once the slide is up, I have the clicker, so I should be able. 1 second. Brilliant. Thank you very much. I will start the board meeting this week by giving an update on where we are for the year so far. We're getting to the end of my first full calendar year as MD. It's been a very successful year. We've had some real success in many areas. I want to say thank you to all of the foundation staff. I think I've pushed everybody this year, not just in terms of the targets of what we've tried to do, but we've also had some good fortune and some good opportunities come our way, and we've pushed the foundation to change the way they work and the amount of work that they've taken on this year quite significantly. So firstly, I hope you'll see a very strong Q3 update, but I want to recognize that the foundation staff have not only worked hard, they've also had a lot of change in the way they're working and changing what we're asking them to do, which they have stepped up to magnificently. So if any of them are listening on a Sunday morning, which hopefully they're not, hopefully they're with their families, having a nice time. But if they watch the recording of this, thank you very much, everyone in the foundation that's worked so hard so far this year. So our notable successes, we spoke at the end of last year about launching the co-fund strategy, and that's really been unexpectedly successful. We actually only expected to launch one co-fund this year, which was the connectivity co-fund we were able to launch with Meta as a partner in March of this year. But we've also launched the one we had planned for 2026, which was a co-fund to support the other main area of our work around safer internet and cybersecurity. What this has allowed us to do is really accelerate a lot of the work that we've done in not just bringing other donors' money into the organization, but far more importantly, understanding how we are good stewards of that money and how we can get it out into programmatic work and grants to our community and our partners and grantees. So it's not just a RevGen success story, it's a whole of ISOC success story. And we will see the numbers later on, but every single part of ISOC and the foundation, from legal to finance to the program teams to the revenue generation team to the empowerment team and the comms team and not least the philanthropy team, have their fingerprints on this success, because building the relationships with those partners and building the proposals for the funding involved everybody. So we've been continuing to grow our ability to support ISOC as a supporting foundation and more importantly, aligning our work there. So the fund raised are supporting the PST targets, which has increased the financial security for the organization overall, not just for this year, but for the next few years going forward. We've done this through new models of partnership, not just by forging relationships with other donors, but also by understanding how we deliver more through partnerships. This is an all ISOC effort and is delivering all ISOC impact. We are improving the way we're able to measure across everything we do with the programs what success looks like for us and how we are understanding the data that we're then able to share with partners to show how this new way of working is reaping dividends. What we also started this year, and you'll see later on when I talk about the 26 plan, is for us a really significant part of bringing that all ISOC story together is unifying comms. We took a lot of steps this year to raise our comms game. Previously, I think we've been very strong as an organization talking about the activities we're doing as bespoke activities. So we had very strong comms, for instance, around Global Encryption Day, very strong comms around reporting back on the events, the peering events, etc., that we do. But we weren't necessarily pulling a strategy and a narrative together at the higher level that ties all of this into an all ISOC narrative. We took big strides in that, which I'll talk about later on. But more importantly, next year we are unifying comms across all of ISOC in a far more holistic way to do this more often. But we started that work this year. And as I say, we're continuing to drive the way that we work across the foundation and ISOC to make sure that everything we do lines up under the 2030 strategy. But we've also learned some good lessons and some hard lessons. Partnerships are key, not just partners bringing money to us, but partners helping us deliver. We can't do all of this work alone. And what we're discovering is the key to scale is, as we're often hearing from Sally, not scaling ISOC, but scaling through partnership. Our ability to deliver through partners, our ability to work with our community, our chapters and org members to deliver the work we do is what allows us to increase the scale of what we're doing. And building partnerships really relies on making ourselves a good partner, having trust and transparency with the people we work with, making it clear why we're a strong organization to partner with is making those partnerships strong and built for the future. As I said, we're doing this in an all ISOC approach. But there's some other lessons that have been a bit harder this year. You know, we are in a year of crisis for nonprofit funding overall. We are in a very fortunate position, but it's been incumbent upon us to wear that responsibility well and to make sure that what we are doing is stepping up to the moment as a nonprofit and supporting the ecosystem of those around us. We were very lucky to be able to do that with some emergency funding for organizations this year, which the board was very supportive of and approved some extra funds to do. Next year, we expect there to be even more of a cliff edge. And what we are doing is looking at how we plan to be exactly that strong and reliable partner to our grantees and our other partners next year. It is a difficult time. We are fortunate, but that means we have a real responsibility to make sure we're supporting others to be as strong and as capable as we are. But we can't help everybody, and there is not enough money possibly in the world, let alone in ISOC, to support all of the nonprofits who are going to struggle next year. So one of the really important things I think we learned this year is sometimes it's important to know what we don't do as well as what we do. We have a very strong focus in our strategy as an all ISOC approach, an all ISOC organization. And more important, I think, alongside the kind of capabilities that other nonprofits would recognize, our ability to bring money in, our ability to get money out, our ability to train people, really our main focus and our main strength is our deep knowledge and experience of our sector. We are the Internet Society, not a generic nonprofit bringing money in and pushing it out. And making sure that as we bring money in, and then more importantly, as we look at how we field requests from other organizations for that money, staying strong, understanding to do what we need to do, and not just feeling like we have a requirement to listen to and respond to every opportunity that comes our way is really important. So learning how to stay focused on our strategy, learning how when we are the best people to do something, but also when we're not, is one of the things I think that really came through this year. Amazing as it sounds, there are things we have said no to this year, even though we've had a ridiculously busy year of some success. And I think being able to say no, and more importantly, the staff knowing that if something doesn't feel like the right thing to do, you know, standing up and saying, I don't think we should do this, is massively important for the strength of us as an organization. So going quickly through the departments, if we start with empowerment, our alumni and training teams, this was the year we were really focusing on the alumni program, really for the first time, and trying to make sure that people who have passed through our fellowship or training programs become very strong advocates and participants in the broader work of the Internet Society. And we really delivered on that. By as of Q3, 31% of our alumni is actively engaged and working in workshops or other events that we do. You know, getting nearly a third of our alumni engaged in 1 year, I think, is really successful. And you'll see when we talk about the success measures for next year that we want to push that even further. Personally, when I was at IGF in Oslo, seeing some of our youth ambassadors there, seeing the alumni and fellows there as well was astonishing. And I think we had an army of supporters walking the halls of that event, pushing ISOC's agenda and helping us get the message across. On training and learning, we have already beaten our KPIs for the year by some margin. So we're beating our target by 41% before the final quarter of the year.
So Chris, can I just interrupt you? Could we actually check to see if the slides are advancing? Because I think
no, they're not. That's my fault. I'm pressing on my laptop and not on this button.
I was like, I think you're in later slides according to what I'm seeing in the board effect, but okay.
I apologize.
No worries. Thanks. Please keep going.
What was that about men not being able to multitask? I think that might be what's happening here. So we have beaten our target. As the discussion we had yesterday in the ISOC board meeting, the question is, well, were our targets advanced enough? And the answer I would give is, actually, a lot of the success has been driven by partners. And again, one of the things we need to look at next year is, are we calibrating our success measures successfully, knowing how much more our partners can deliver? Sally shared with me some numbers that we'll present in the final year roll-up. That means that actually this training and learning number, we've probably beaten by about another 4,000, because one of our partners has been immensely successful in driving training and learning on connectivity. So this is a success story, but the skill for us now is really being able to gauge what success looks like in a far more partner-driven approach. A significant part of this, as we said, we wanted the strategy to deliver training partners, has been our ability to use chapters, our core community, to deliver this. We've had 1,500 of our learners supported by chapter-led training with a 97% satisfaction rate, which is phenomenal. We only want this to increase, and some of the areas at the moment where we know chapters are ahead of ISOC in their training, particularly around safer internet topics, of anti-scam training and safety online training, where chapters are already doing that work. We're in the process, as you heard yesterday in the ISOC presentation, of building the online safety and training hub, building more materials there so that we can support and amplify some of the work the chapters are already doing. So we expect to see that number only increase, not just for the rest of the year, but also as we go into next year as well. More importantly, we've really focused on training areas and communities which are very hard to work in. And in particular, this year, we've had real success in working with refugee communities, particularly in Rhino and Kakuma camps in Uganda and Kenya. And that's been, for me, some of the most kind of personally gratifying experiences that we've seen. Training in refugee populations is hard. The resources aren't there. Often the skill base isn't there. Joyce and the team were in one of the training camps only a few weeks ago, and Joyce reported to me talking to someone who, after being given their graduation certificate, was over the moon because it's the first certificate of education they'd ever been given in their entire life. But we're also starting to see the knock-on effect of that training. We've seen that one of the trainees from our refugee training camps connected their community and is already building out the possibility of other networks to connect to their community as well. So putting their training into practice. Somebody else applied for a job 2 weeks before graduation and has already got that job. So we're seeing some of those kind of individual data points happen already, but it's hard work. It requires a lot of sensitivity to the situation the refugee community is in, and also an understanding of what they can then do with that going forward. I'd just like to quickly show you a video that tells some of the stories from the training program and shows the kind of environments that we're training in.
I want to use my skills to help my community to set up secure and efficient networking in maybe schools, business, churches. I've been having curiosity on how the internet and digital communication system works beyond the scene. I joined this training because I wanted to understand the technology that connects people and devices all over the world. I saw it as an opportunity to build and practice skills on the IT field. Before I joined, I only have basic understanding about the thing like Wi-Fi.
We normally train on designing and deploying computer network implemented by Computer for Schools Kenya and We Center in partnership with the Internet Society and the Internet Society Foundation. Each training takes 6 weeks.
Having learned in a networking class or course, I gained practical knowledge. So I got to know how to set up devices, small network, how to visualize data, and how to ping the network when it is down.
This program has made me realize how much we rely on networks in our daily lives. A moment that made me proud, there was a moment when I successfully configured a network with multiple routers and switches, and everything was perfect. That gave me a huge confidence boost.
Our goal is to bridge the digital divide by helping trainees understand how technology connects people and information. We want them to live with employable and technical skills.
We were able to manage because we could share, discuss, understand a lot from each other, especially as colleagues. Our instructor was also able to help us a lot.
We have identified several learners who have made a major step. For instance, one of our first cohort learner in Kakumawana set up a network called Infinite Technology, which is now supplying within that specific location of Kakumawana, specifically Hong Kong. And he has around 21 network devices.
What I would tell the young youth in the community is that don't intimidate yourself. You don't need to be expert to start. All you need is curiosity and willingness to learn. That will give you the real future in tech.
So again, what you're seeing there is the partnership approach, not just the partnership between ISOC and the foundation, between the training team and empowerment and the program team, but also their Computer for Schools, which is one of our philanthropy grantees. You know, when we bring all of the assets of ourselves and our community together, we can achieve absolutely amazing things. So moving on to talk about philanthropy, as I said, I think I probably stretched this team more than any other this year because of the way they've had to learn not just how to continue with their own strategy of distributing the board designated funds we're very lucky to have in our own granting programs, but as we take money from other donors, how to build granting strategies that align our philanthropic strategy, what we want to achieve with our money, with the needs and the desires of other donors as well. But they have stepped up fantastically. So we're now working with multiple donors in the cybersecurity and the safer internet funds, and with the common good and with the community connectivity funds as well. So there's been a huge amount of work by this team. As I said, we actually achieved our 2026 timeline for those this year. Getting the money in is hard, but building a robust process to get out and measure the impact of distributing that money through programs of work and grants is possibly even harder. So what the team has done this year is really phenomenal. And as you will have experienced at the board retreat, just sending out a call for funding and getting proposals in is not as simple as it sounds. Actually managing an increasing pipeline of proposals to us and selecting the right grantees is a very labor-intensive process, and they've done a phenomenal job this year. What we've also been able to do is bring in other donors and other programs. So next year we will be able to launch an anti-scam training program with support from an external partner that would allow us and chapters and other parts of our community to improve the training to support people in preventing and recognizing scams. And this has allowed us to, as I say, really increase the scope and the field of work that the philanthropy team has done. What we're also looking at, and particularly as we go into next year, we will focus on what happens after the grant and how with certain types of grantee, we can look at what sustainability looks like. So grants aren't perpetually needed to support programs. This is harder in some areas than others, but particularly with connectivity, building sustainable business models and training grantees with the support of the ISOC team to understand what sustainability looks like and how it can be achieved is a really valuable lesson. And one of the things we've been able to do as we go through this, and as we've committed this grant out, is understand how some of our grantees are coming up with really valuable and sometimes very unique ways of sustaining the work that they're doing and that they're kicking off with this grant. So we have managed, and we will manage to get all of our funds out this year, and we've managed to increase and improve the transparency and the communication around what we're doing. But most importantly, what we've been able to do is support rethinking some of these strategies to get stronger alignment, bringing new people in like Chris Burns as our VP of Philanthropy and Stephanie Parker as the Director of MEL. But also looking, if we go on to the next video, at how some of our grantees are really investigating every possible way of developing sustainability into their programs so that there is life after the grant and a continuation of the work after our donor funds have expired. We have the next video, please.
Keirowua naa maisha enakop oleng, airowua oleng, lakini anyokita siake nanu, anyok siake nanu nonkoonkoni, airrita nkuti tare ainei, naturisho.
My name is Irene Loki. I'm a librarian at the Ilmwesi Community Resource Center. As a girl, getting yourself into school or to higher education is not that easy. Our parents force us to get married. They don't give you that opportunity to be someone you want to be. You have to follow what they say. And then after the ceremony, you'll go and follow the man, even if you don't know him. When I was in high school, a mentor from our community gave us a talk about the impact of education. The moment I saw her, I told myself, if she can make it, I can also make it. I could tell my dad that when I grow up, I don't want to live the life you people are living. I want to have a job, or I want to be someone different.
Our parents didn't go to school, but we went to school. We want the future generation to be learned, and that's why we have this hub here.
The Mawingu Foundation exists to provide holistic digital inclusion in Kenya. Our work is not just to provide or to drop an internet cable, but it's about opening opportunities.
We have the computers, they have internet. Everybody has a different job to do. Some of them are students. Somebody can do online jobs.
This internet is really helping me. I started with certificate, and then currently I'm in records in diploma. I'll complete my education maybe next year, God willing. And then that's how now we saw the impact of the internet in the library or in the community.
Some of the challenges that the community face, one is the affordability of connectivity. They do not have enough money. So for them to contribute, they can only give what they have. And being a pastoralist community, they rear goats, they rear sheep, and they have herds of cattle. This is where you find goats actually paying for bills. So it's a form of sustainability mechanism just to make sure that their children have access to digital connectivity and be able to participate meaningfully in the digital economy.
Internet contributed improving my knowledge because I learned English online. I opened an online freelancing account, and that is how I cope with my life. So everything that I did online improved me.
Alotu anyok aisom nkera ainei amu ore nena kuti tare ainei neisho, ore peisho tenaa ntare tomon natoisho naakikisha ajo ore ake ninye telde ari katumo naa nabo toonena kuti tokitin ainei natumo naing'orua tinakata.
Education is everything. It changes lives. You can have something for yourself. You can go to school. So with that, we hope we will change. Our community will change.
I think a couple of things from that video, again, partnership, that was with Mwingu Foundation. It's our ability to work with them and help deliver with them that creates programs like that. But I think also that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to sustainability. That feels a little bit like an extreme example where a pastoral community is able to respond with the one thing they have to contribute. But I think this points to the fact that after a few decades of seeing large telco models and approaches to connecting the last few billion on the planet, there probably isn't a way we can fly balloons or drones or lay fiber and assume that the market picks up in the way it does. The beauty of the way that ISOC works is our very community-focused way of approaching connectivity and approaching sustainability for connectivity. There are as many different sustainable models for providing connectivity to a community as we have projects. And I think what we learn as we work with partners and we work across ISOC and the foundation is how unique some of those solutions are. So going then into revenue generation, we have talked in the earlier presentations yesterday about the success this year, in raising over 18 million in funds. These funds will be spent down over the next few years. So this provides not only a boost to our ability to do stuff next year, but for the next few years as well. But far more importantly, and I wanted to illustrate this with this photo, one of the wear times, you'll actually see me wearing a suit. This is a photo from New York during the UN General Assembly Week, when we were able to host a private meeting of other donors and partners during that during that event. One of the things we are doing this year and are continuing to do with Sally and the rest of ISOC is step up our presence and profile as a donor with other donors and with other multilaterals. We launched the Common Good Cyber Fund at the G7 event with support from Canada and the UK. And there we have representations from the UK Minister Chris Esmore, the Canadian Ambassador Michael Gore, our partner and great friend Ben Ryan from Meta, myself and Sally. Part of our ability to be a good donor is in understanding what other donors are doing and how our activities fit within them. And more importantly, working with them to create co-funds when it makes sense for us to be the host, but also contribute and support some of their activities when they're the best partner to do that. What we've really done this year at that event and many others is increased our profile and indeed our confidence in talking to other donors as a major donor and supporting that work. We've also really focused on organizational membership strategy, and you'll see next year this is the major focus for the revenue generation team. Ono Boss, who's in that picture there with our new organizational member, HGC Global Communications, has been astonishing this year in bringing in 4 new organizational members. We recognize this is important for the diversity of our revenue streams, but far more importantly for the diversity of our community and indeed the diversity of people who can stand to sit on this board. We have aggressive targets for next year to increase this even more, but building and supporting that network of organizational members who from the industry support our work has been a focus this year and will continue to be as we go forward, not just from a revenue perspective, but probably more importantly, from a diversity of membership perspective. And then finally, going into strategic communications before, as you would expect, I finish on a video. We've done a lot to revamp our community communications, and hopefully our community sees this. What we've done is increase the transparency of what the foundation does with the community. And sometimes this has been very personal. I feel like I've lived on a plane this year as I've gone from country to events and made sure Sally, myself, Yogesh and others are seeing the community and meeting with them and talking about what we're doing. But we're also doing this by making sure we're on all the chat calls, making sure we have new communication channels and emails that go out that talk about all the grants we're doing so that our community is very well aware of exactly what it is that the foundation is doing. And far more importantly, how the foundation can support and fund them in what they're doing. We will continue to do more of this going forward, but I think this has been a huge win this year in bringing our community on side to us as partners and making sure that we're supporting them with the work that they're doing. But probably one of the big successes this year has been part of that building the higher narrative. How do we talk about the broad narrative of what Internet Society is and what it does in a way that people actually understand? What we do, as we all know, is quite niche sometimes, quite nuanced and maybe a little bit nerdy. I always know when someone asks me what I do for a living when they first meet me, it takes me about 5 minutes. to explain the nature of the organization and then the nature of my role within it. So building that coherent narrative in a way that we can distribute to a broad audience is quite hard. But I think the communications team in ISOC as a whole did this brilliantly in the Who Runs the Internet campaign. In a year where we've had not just IGF, but also the WSIS Plus 20 event, being able to describe what multi-stakeholder internet governance means, let alone why it's important, is really hard. And I think the team did this very well with this series of videos explaining the 6 key groups, including individual users, who actually support the way that the internet works and the way that the internet runs. It's got a lot of response. And I noticed on the board Slack yesterday, there was a mention of one of the board members where people are coming up to you saying, I didn't know and didn't appreciate that actually that's how the internet works. So getting this message out there and helping people understand the massively valuable work we do as a broad community is important. We will do more of this next year. But I wanted to finish the Q3 update just by showing one of the videos that explains exactly how our community delivers the work it does well.
The internet is a global resource. Every day, people make decisions that impact who gets to use it where, how, and at what cost. But who gets to make those decisions? Who runs the internet? The answer is nobody. And everybody. Even you. But more precisely, no one by themselves. The internet is a shared resource and a shared responsibility. There are the nonprofits. Yes, the internet makes a lot of people a lot of money, but nonprofits have always been at the heart of keeping it running. There are the policymakers, from national to international governing bodies, from legislators to regulators to policy experts. Laws and regulations shape our daily experience online. There are the educators, the people who grow the capacity for individuals and communities to build, use, and support the internet. There's the technical community, made up of people who create and maintain the vast physical infrastructure of the internet, all those wires and servers and grids. There are the standard setters, who make it so that the millions of devices behind the internet work with your devices to provide a seamless online experience. Last but not least, there's you. Without you, there is no internet. People, users, are what make the internet interesting, through creativity, through ideas, through advocacy, and you can help defend the internet too. For the next 6 weeks, we'll be digging into how each of these pie pieces impacts the internet, and how the only way to make sure the internet is for everyone to be for the internet.
So that concludes the 2-3 presentation. There is a read ahead and a document going through the success measures. We are broadly on target. As I said, in some cases we have beaten targets already, and we're looking at what more we can do. But I think the real success measure of this year is we have transformed the way the foundation can support ISOC. We've changed this fiscally. We've changed this in our work, in our granting, and our training, and our comms. And far more importantly, as Sally said yesterday, and as Yogesh said as he went through the ISOC proposals, we're building an organization that is going to be even stronger next year when it's going to be needed the most. And when we need to step up, we're going to be in a very strong position to do that. So the success measures add up to the KPIs and add up to our ability to track our progress on what we put in the strategy. But actually, the story of this year is a lot more than that. It's the things we've done outside of those success measures and plans. It's how we've responded to opportunities and challenges that have come to us, but how we're learning new ways of working internally with partners and externally with partners to scale and improve what we do for the mission of ISOC overall. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Chris? Charles.
Chris, thanks for the great work with the foundation this year. And I heard you saying that in some cases where there might be organizations or partners coming over to us to try to get support, but for many different reasons, maybe too many or too many of them, or beyond what we can do and so on, that we have to turn them away. Two questions. What might be some of the criteria that we use to make those decisions? And second, what else can we do to help them, even if we cannot take all of their, take in all of their demands or wishes?
So the first part of that question is very easy to answer, and the second part isn't. So the criteria we choose is the strategy. We've had success with donors wanting to partner with us this year, which has been actually sometimes donors have approached us to partner on areas which are not strategic priorities for us. And in that case, it's very easy to say, not no, but we're not the right people for this, and to help them try and find other organizations or other partners that could support them in that way. So the way we decide what we say yes and no to is 100% based on strategic fit and the strengths of the organization. We are not the right organization to do everything in a very broad technology sector. We have to focus on the things we have deep strength on. When it's more kind of people requesting support, that's a bit trickier. But again, what we try and do is point them towards other donors, other organizations that can support them. It's never a hard no. It's we're not perhaps the right partner here, but let us help you try and find someone who can be the right partner. And again, this is where there's better connectivity with other donors, understanding better what other donor strategies are out there and other donor funding is out there, so that we push people to other partners that might be able to support and help them. But yeah, we are never going to be able to help everybody, but we can help people find someone that can support them if it isn't us. And we try and do that as much as possible.
Caleb?
So, well done, great job. My concern basically was the membership addition that you did this year. Great job having 4 new org members.
Caleb, you need to be a little closer to the mic.
Okay, do I have to repeat myself, all the previous stuff I said? Okay. So that you have that 4 new members, it's great. Not like we're pushing you to get more members. But I think in this meeting, there's been some concerns previously that some members board members have raised about how we can have even more members. Take, for example, from Africa, right? If there is a reduced cost, because most of the startups and some organizations that you get to see maybe around there might have to look at the value proposition of what you're giving to them versus how they're going to cough out, let's say, the minimum amount for org members, right? So I'm just suggesting that perhaps on the one hand, if there is a threshold reduction for not like you're geolocating org members like from that particular area, but how they can still participate if there is maybe a different category of membership for them, right? That might be a bit of reduced cost that will still make them participate because you have a value proposition for them. Because it's a good thing all the time when we get to see all the good work you're doing in Africa. But when I look at the org member list, I see less participation of organizational members from Africa as well. So it started making me think, hey, you're giving. Somebody also needs to give back, right? And participate actively. So I'm just suggesting that it should probably be like a two-way thing. And then earlier on, I was trying to get some information from Sally. And she said, or rather, I was suggesting that perhaps some of the vendors that we also do business with in ISOC, right? And PIR as well. It's also a good thing for us to have them subscribe to our organizational membership, membership, right? That it's a good way of increasing that number. So perhaps I'm pretty sure from what information I gathered and what I saw on the OM list, that some of the registry service providers also are members of the organization, but that's good and excellent. What about some others from, that you do stuff with from ISOC? So it's just about increasing the membership base, and the PST also, increases from there and becomes a good one. So it's just a suggestion, something for you to take away to improve on the good job you've been doing. Thanks.
No, thanks. And it's a great comment, well made. And we'll talk about it a little bit more after the break when we go through the 26 plan. One of the things the Rev Gen and on Yogesh's side, the external engagement team did this year was a whole day workshop on the value proposition for organizational members. And there's stuff coming out of that that we'll start to deliver on in 2026, which is very much in line with what you're saying. There needs to be an easier entry route to becoming an organizational member of ISOC and an easier path to understanding what the value of that is and how we drive value for organizational members, and then how we move people up in the way that they both contribute in their activities and also contribute fiscally. So the team is looking at a whole new strategy for how we bring organizational members in that can support people coming in at maybe a lower level to initially start off with and then moving their way through. So, lowering the cost allows people to come in, but what we then need to have is a clear value proposition that encourages participation. And also what Yogesh and I and the teams are looking at is what our success measures are for next year and how we understand what the kind of net adds and the net retentions are, so that we understand what levels of engagement we're getting as we're growing that base, not just what the base itself is. So we can talk about that a little bit more after the break, but hopefully you'll see that we're delivering on that in the plan for organizational membership as a strategy in 26.
Thanks very much for raising that issue, Caleb. I do see that actually in our organizational members, there are a number of new African partners there, Wingu, WIOCC, and some others that have joined. And I think that one of the elements we probably need to go back to is this partnership idea, that perhaps one of the things we do is not necessarily encourage them to become organizational members right away, but as I think Chris was suggesting, we bring them in as partners on specific projects and then move from that specific partnership to a more general relationship. And that might be in some cases that they become members of the Internet Society at some specific level. It also might be the case that we become ongoing members in their efforts. We talked a little bit yesterday about CODI, the CODI effort, where we became founding members of that. And I think our overall aim is to deepen the relationship. And it's always great when that turns into the kind of relationship that's a membership in the Internet Society, because it demonstrates an affiliation to our the Internet is for everyone touchstone. But I believe that the deepening relationship can go both ways, and that the partnerships that we're developing there, we may find more than one way that we want to kind of create those long-term relationships and partnerships. Okay.
Morning. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ted. Chris, wanted to say thank you for the presentation, and I'm happy to see the kind of impact that you're displaying, especially impact beyond the numbers, and sort of looks at the development angle in terms of what the internet, how the internet is a force for good for everyone. I just have one question, writing off what Ted and Caleb said about organization members, and how can we, or how can you get more organization members outside the Amazons, Mozillas, and Googles, and then beginning to look at maybe like the Gates Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, and some of these foundations who, of course, need the work of the Internet Society. I know that you currently engage, of course, with Gates like as funders. I'm not sure if they are organizational members, or is that possible for them to also be organization members so that they are contributing to the Internet Society as an institution, where maybe like institutional support, and also able to be funders for ISOX programs? Over.
No, absolutely. I don't think I would ever say no to any of our partners also becoming organizational members. Although I think with the foundations, the primary aim is to bring them in as co-funders and to kind of bring them in probably a far deeper way to contribute to what we're doing than just an organizational membership. But we would never say no. I think actually I'll refer back to what Ted said, which is actually a good partnership strategy, a good organizational membership strategy has many ways of entry and many kind of points where we can begin to engage and partner with an organization. And that is also two-way. You know, we were working with those donors and we have contributed to other donor co-funds in the past. So I don't think we would ever say no to organizational membership. I don't know it's the first thing we would approach foundations with, because we initially want to understand what their own granting strategies are, how that maps against ours, and where there are opportunities for us to work together both ways to co-fund. But I think that as we start to work more with these foundations, it may bring them to the stage where they want a more formal relationship with us outside of those particular pieces of work that might lead to an organizational strategy. But I think, as Ted says, you know, a good organizational membership strategy doesn't have a single point of entry and a single path through it. It's more like a funnel where people come in various ways they touch the organization, and then we show them the value of having a deeper engagement and we walk them through that. But we'll take the comment on board and look at how we can work with our donor community to make them more structurally aligned to who we are as an organization and what we do.
Thanks for that, Chris. I want to go back to something that you said. I think I lost count at about a dozen times, and that's an all ISOC strategy. It's particularly gratifying for the board to see the integration that you and Yogesh have worked on. We mentioned this yesterday, but in this meeting, it's important for us to mention again, because that partnership has really deepened and changed a great deal since the two of you came on board, and we appreciate the work that you've done. I think as we think about it, one of the aspects of that all ISOC strategy is that we have to be somewhat improvisational in how we interconnect the different parts of the organization and how we interconnect with our different partners. I think one of the key things that we learned during the course of the first era of the philanthropic part of the foundation was that many of our partners were also potential grantees, and that their deep knowledge of specific contexts or territories made them especially effective in delivering some of the programs that we might have had trouble doing organizationally from ISOC Global or from the foundation itself. So it's really nice to see the ability of the group to kind of change over the course of the year as we took on the co-fund strategy and took on some of the other adjustments to how the integration works. But as I said to Yogesh yesterday, the reward for doing good work is more work. And I'm afraid that the same is going to be true here. I think this is going to be an ongoing act of improvisation and adjustment as we grow and change. There's one level of scaling that we're going to get to with these two funds and with these sets of partners, but there are other levels of scaling that are coming and new kinds of partnerships that are coming here. And I think the point that Caleb and Funke were making is some of those partnerships aren't with a Ford Foundation or a government. They're with people who are using goats to pay for their internet. And we have to think about those partnerships at all of those scales to really be successful. And I think the comms team is doing a really great job at the moment in capturing those. But we really have to take it on board, both at the board level and throughout the organization, that sometimes the most effective way to get something done is really the most local. And though our mission, the internet is for everyone, is a global mission, the actual success of the mission is always local. We don't connect the internet to everybody in a generic fashion. We do it where they are and where they need it. So I really congratulate you on the work of the year. I I warn you that there's more work coming. And with that, we're going to take a short break so that he can rest his vocal cords before we start discussion of the action plan for next year. We'll return at, I believe it's 5 after. Yeah, so 15 minutes from now. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everybody, and welcome back. The next item on our agenda is, again, Chris, this time talking about the presentation of the 2026 action plan. Chris.
Thank you very much, Ted. We're going to have a hopefully more seamless run through the slides this time. So for the first but not the last time, I will say next slide, please. So building very much on what Ted was saying just as we closed out, the penalty you pay for doing good work is you get more work. I think what we're doing in 26 is really building on the unbelievable amount of work that the foundation team has done in 25, and then scaling that again, but also consolidating some of the gains. If 26 was the year of substantial growth for revenue generation, then, sorry, 25 was the year of substantial growth for revenue generation, then 26 is the year where we learn how to use that money wisely and effectively. So you will see some increase in the success measures. You will see some bold goals in what we're trying to do. But the real messages in 26 are much tighter, stronger, and clearer alignment with ISOC and the strategy. Becoming a really good steward of the very fortunate position we find ourselves in, and building again on that partnership mantra. Understanding how we bring more partners into the Internet Society's ecosystem, and how we support the existing ecosystem that sits there in the best way we possibly can. As always, we can't do this alone. We do this with the support of the broader ISOC organization and community and the rest of our partners who are out there. Next slide, please. One of the things I do want to do as we go through these next slides a little bit rapidly, and again, both the action plan read ahead has been distributed and will be published online as well as this. But if we go to the next slide, what I wanted to do is actually call out how we are supporting the 6 programs of ISOC and how we are aligning our work that sits underneath this. So the first example we will take here is the empowerment team, who run all of our training programs and fellowship programs and alumni programs. And this is probably actually one of the easier ways, and has historically been one of the easier ways, to show how tightly aligned we are. This slide just shows the fellowships and the alumni. But you can see already that there are very strong fellowship programs that sit underneath the 6 pillars of our strategy in the 6 program areas. And in particular, what we will do in 26 is take on some of those under the wing of the empowerment team. So some things like Pulse Fellowship, which had previously, not been managed by the empowerment team, will be managed by the empowerment team. So we bring a much stronger alignment. We bring a much stronger sense of understanding what works and what doesn't work, as the empowerment team builds a really strong funnel and process for managing all kinds of fellowships. And then importantly, as you'll see the big band along the bottom there, turning those fellows into alumni, turning those fellows into long-term people who support ISOC and what we do. Next slide, please. Then when we look at the other work that empowerment does, and we look at training and learning, again, this is a very easy area to show where we support ISOC, because a lot of the training is integral to the way that the programs work within ISOC. Whether it's the training we saw in the videos in the last session, where we're helping people design and deploy computer networks, all the way through to, in program 6, the training we offer chapter and our partners, not just in grant application and implementation, but in how we understand how they manage and strengthen the chapters themselves. Our training programs, and more importantly, the platform our training programs sit on, give us an incredibly strong opportunity for growth within the programmatic work. We're very lucky to have a very strong training and learning platform that we can deploy globally, that we can give all partners internally and externally access to, and that we can load new content onto to distribute and then get data back on the success of those training programs very simply. So underpinning all of this is a very strong IT function, again, very strong collaboration with Yogesh and his team in TSS there, that allows us to kind of have a solid platform that we can build new partnerships and new programs onto. There's an area there that's a gap here, internet insights and innovation. I think there are areas we could look at there, but primarily in empowerment, we're looking at working with the Pulse team and other areas around the fellowships and around understanding the role of researchers in Pulse data and what we're doing with Pulse data and how we can support fellowships and research activities around that to support that area. Next slide, please. Going on to impactful giving and the philanthropy team, this has been the area where we've done the most work this year to align and where we will continue to do the most work next year to align. Initially, the foundation as a philanthropy team had its own strategy, which was well within the overall organization of ISOC, but didn't necessarily sit directly under the programs in the way its strategic focus has been. We did a full review of the programs in 2025, and next year, all of our programs will have granting strategies that have been developed in partnership with Yogesh's team leaders and with the program leads to make sure that when we're granting money in a way that supports the overall strategy and more importantly, brings partners' knowledge, data, and experience into those programs through our grantees. And again, you saw that in some of those videos. You saw some of our grantees working in those previous videos on programs that are key for us. So whether it's research, which frankly can support research activities sitting across everything, but as we said, we're very excited about what more we can do with internet insights and innovation there. Whether it's the way that skills will support and work with community-centered connectivity, but also look at how we protect people once they're online in the online trust and safety program. And to the ones that have always been very closely aligned to those programs for many years, like community-centered connectivity or the funding we offer to IGFs, etc. What we're trying to do is make sure that what we have are 6 program areas we want to work in. And what we're really doing as a combined organization is understanding what is the best way for us to drive impact in that program. Is it program of work which is done by ISOC, or is it offering a grant out to a partner that can help us do more and scale more on the way that we work? And that becomes the fundamental premise underlining the way that our philanthropy supports those program areas. Next slide, please. These two are a little bit more cross-cutting, so this isn't perhaps the most informational chart in the world, but just for consistency to show how the other 2 areas of the foundation support this. Recognized global brand, as I said, what we're doing next year is centralizing all comms across ISOC so that we have those clear messages there. So what looks like a painfully simplistic picture there actually tells, as I will go on to say later in this deck, a much more complex story. Revenue generation, as I said last year, has supported the organization with its fiscal strength and will continue to do that. But far more importantly, and I'll say this again, when we have brought new donors in, it is with deep integration and support from the program areas. You know, the money we've brought in has not just been brought in by revenue generation, it's been brought in by partnerships with the program leads to understand how we're bringing money in a way that supports their programs. So these 2 images look a little bit simplistic because we're copying the same format as the other slides, but actually the work within that, as we will talk about on later slides, is a lot more complex and a lot more finely tuned to the nature of the programs than perhaps this suggests. Next slide, please. So going into these, if we look initially at empowerment and how we want to cultivate future internet leaders, and next slide. So in 2026, we will strengthen our alumni engagement. We did really well getting 30% last year, or this year, in engagement. We want to push that further and make sure that there are plenty of reasons for alumni of our training and fellowship programs to continue to support, to engage and work with the Internet Society and our activities. We're broadening our programs, our fellowship programs in particular, taking on board some of those that already exist, so that in total we'll have 8 different fellowship programs. What we're also doing, and we've talked about this on previous board calls, is looking at how we streamline our fellowship programs so that we're getting the kind of economies of scale there. We're not running 8 completely different programs. What we're looking at is, you know, there is a broad mid-career program through which there may be 8 different content tracks, or an early career program through which there may be 8 different content tracks. So we want to try and make it so that there is a clear flow and funnel for people to come through our fellowship program, not just to make it easier for manage, but also because we think there is real strength in connecting fellows across those programs. So for one example, taking on board the Pulse Fellows next year, people who are working deep in the data of internet measurement, our ability to connect them to some early and mid-career policy fellows, so people who want to use that data to drive policy positions or understand regulation, is going to be a real value for us. So starting to build a lot of that commonality across fellowships by having a common process is going to be a big thing in 26.
So how do you plan to measure success for that, for the strengthening the interconnection and the broadening?
We have, on the next slide, some data points about what our broad engagement is. I don't know we have a success measure at the moment about what that interrelationship is, because we're going to try and do it organically through our convenings and our calls where we bring fellows together across programs, but happy to look at whether we want some kind of measure to see what the communication between those different cohorts is for next year. What we're also doing is scaling our training initiatives. As I said in the Q3 update, we've already beat the target for training this year because our partners are being so successful. We want to increase that scale even more, and you'll see some very aggressive targets on that on the next slide. But this also means scale isn't the only success measure here. We also want to adapt and understand how you build sustainable local training capacity. There is not a one-size-fits-all solution to delivering training in an effective way. And understanding, as we said in the previous session, how very specific localization works with our approach. So whilst we do want to achieve scale, we do not want to lose sight of the fact that just rolling out a new module on a global training and learning digital platform is not success. When we talked, as we saw in the video on the last presentation, the very specific way you need to work with certain communities like refugee communities, we want to make sure we are also tailoring our approach to make sure we're meeting the needs of the community where they are and not just delivering over the top of them and hoping we pick people up. There is strength and depth in what we want to do, as well as just the breadth and the scale of what we're trying to achieve. Next slide, please. So what does this measure of success look like? Moving on to nearly doubling the amount of people we train online and in person next year to 11,000 people compared to 2025. As I said before, we're over the moon that 1,500 people were trained by our chapters so far this year. And when we look at other partners, that number is even bigger. We want to have 3,400 people trained by partners and chapters using our platform and materials next year. I think we can probably go even further than that. Again, the caveat is we're looking at the people we can measure within our platform, but we know our partners are using their own platforms to achieve numbers even bigger than this. So I think as we go through the year and as we understand at the end of this year's numbers where we are with some of our partners, it may be that these numbers get increased as we go forward. We want to make sure we are training the trainers and have at least 100 tutors and trainers. Been watching Celebrity Traitors on the BBC. It's a great program. That's a Freudian slip. We want 100 tutors and trainers delivering training. It's quite hard to say. And then we want to really drive the engagement of our alumni and our fellows in our program. You'll see a slightly higher number on fellows than alumni. Again, remember, we had 34% of our alumni overall in 25 so far engaging with programs. We want to increase that to 50%. Fellows should be more engaged. Fellows are coming to us early or mid-career, are choosing to really participate with us at the stage where they are already on their journeys of influence, and therefore it should be much easier and more obvious for them to engage and work with us. Take your note, Ted, that what we will also look at is, do we have a measure for how we're cross-pollinating those fellows and how we're building those relationships between the different fellowship programs in meaningful and productive ways. Next slide. So looking at impactful giving. Next slide, please. Again, we achieved a lot of what we wanted to achieve in terms of new co-funds in 25. So this is the year of consolidation and delivery. In 2026, we will need to do what we told our partners we are able to do in 25. So this is very much a year of getting our processes, our granting strategies, and our ability to work with other donors and new partners secure, robust, working strongly with legal and finance so that we have the right operational processes to manage money and report how it's being used, and really very strong partnerships between our MEL team and SAI so that we're able to report out the impact not just to ourselves and you, but also to our other donors and our other partners in how this success is going. So absolutely delivering as we do every year on how we give out our own money, but learning how to effectively align that with other people's money and to report back on that as well. The other thing we're going to need to do is provide a lot of capacity building support for our grantees in what's going to be a very difficult year for them. Helping our partner organization and our grantees and our chapters and anyone we work with in a granting relationship understand how they navigate a resource constrained environment is going to be a big job for the team. Ted.
So there are kind of two sets of capacity building that I'm hearing you say here. And one is capacity building around what they'll need to do to report back to us for the grants that have been managed through these co-funds, which may be slightly different than what we've historically done, especially if we're working with chapters who've had a different regime. But what I just heard you say is, how do they manage in a constrained environment? And talk to me a little bit more about what role you see us playing there, because that's a little bit different than we've historically done. You mentioned in the previous one, we make references, right? Maybe you don't come to us, you go to them. But in this capacity building, are you thinking about how do they manage with fewer resources, or how do they find resources in a resource constrained environment, or something else?
Both of those things, but I think the main thing is changing the nature of the communicative relationship we have with grantees. We're very lucky. Our team does fantastic grantee outreach, and we have good channels for grantee reporting. But those channels, like all donors at the moment, are really based around fiscal reporting, milestone reporting, and success reporting. Next year, we need our grantees to tell us when they're in trouble. Next year, we need them to come to us and say, look, we might be struggling to do this a little bit, and we need to look at how we can do it in a different way. And I think that needs a much more open and agile and flexible communication channel with our grantees, and a constant process of checking in and understanding what pressures they are under. My biggest concern next year is that a grantee comes to us and shows that they haven't been able to sustain the work they do when it's too late for us to help. So a lot of it is communication, regular, open, honest, and consistent. I will say to people, I've been a donor for a year, but I was a grantee for the 14 years before that. Actually going to your donor and saying, we might be in trouble, is an incredibly nerve-wracking thing to do. It's like going to your bank manager and saying, I can't pay the mortgage. We need to make it easy for all of our grantees and partners to be honest with us about the situation they're in, so that we can understand how we can help, or how we can find other ways of helping them in what they do. So yes, the formal reporting, but also genuine, strong, open communication.
So thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I think there are two very strong challenges with that, and one is that sort of communication tends to scale with human connections, and managing that without having to scale up the people managing the communication is going to be particularly challenging. And the second is you're ultimately talking about how to measure impact, and it can be particularly difficult for people to say, not we're having trouble managing this particular process, or we tried importing it and we couldn't get that done because some bureaucratic thing we weren't expecting. But if they're actually not making the impact that they intended to, that's much more problematic for people to say. And finding out a way to make that linkage between understanding how they're going through the process and whether or not they're going to have the impact they intended, that may be ultimately a very, very difficult conversation, because you don't want to tell them they're not having the impact, and you want to make sure that they feel capable of telling you. And I think as you think about this, part of the priority and what impactful giving makes, it may be a moment when you have to look at your partners in particular ways and saying, are those partners capable of having those conversations, or do we have to do it? And that, I think, is going to be, a resource allocation issue in next year. But if you have resource allocation issues with that, please come to the board early.
Yeah.
Don't tell us late in next year that this was an issue, because obviously, that may be a moment when board allocated funds or something else to make this work may be necessary early.
No, thank you. That's incredibly generous and something my team will be very welcome to hear. A good friend of mine used to run a lot of tech and development salons in DC, and one of the most popular ones he did was called FailFest. And it was where the development industry did something the development industry never does, which is stands up on stage and said, I ran this program, we thought we were going to have this impact, and we didn't. But here's what we learned. And I think you'll see the learning sessions on this page, what we want to do, driving impact and understanding what people are doing. If you make it okay for people to say we tried something and it didn't work, everybody learns, and turn that into a learning environment in the way that we work.
Okay.
Add that also in the spirit of trust-based philanthropy, which is what the sector is moving to as funds, the funding crunch is biting and closing in on everyone. I think it's a good step that ISOC is taking and the foundation is taking ahead of what next year tsunami is going to look like, but also to note that it might be a good thing to also start learning from other founders or funders who are doing similar work, because I'm aware that there are organizations also trying to see how they can create soft landing for their partners, grantees and beneficiaries of the work that they do. It might be a useful thing to also be looking at maybe a community of practice and how to share learning around how they are also dealing with this situation. And I do agree with Ted that this is going to be more work for the team, but maybe streamlining how they report in the current reporting framework to maybe just create an extra line rather than something different in terms of a channel to say when they're having problems. But in the current quarterly, yearly, or monthly grant reporting that you have, to just have that line that then allows the grantees to put in a word or two, fill in some details about how they're doing and where the pressure points are. Thank you.
No, well noted. We are taking on extra staff to meet the need that we're giving out more money next year. But as you say, the unique thing of next year is not just that we're taking on more grantees, but also those grantees will have more needs. And I think we will keep you informed on kind of how we're managing that and the way we're doing it. So success on the next slide for the philanthropy team is again, the numbers show the basic KPIs, but as we just discussed, the story of success is as much a qualitative as a quantitative one. 13 million given out of our own money with an extra 4 million from co-fund initiatives. 90% of grantees reporting positive feedback following capacity development support doesn't really tell the story of what we've just discussed. For me, success next year is we're able to sustain and build our field and our ecosystem, not just maintain it. And I think that's the challenge when I speak to the philanthropy team that I've given them, that we recognize we are a significant donor in the space now as others have fallen aside, and we have a responsibility to make sure our ecosystem is surviving and as much as possible thriving. And that's the real challenge that kind of underpins those success measures. Next slide. And again, next slide. So as I keep trailing, we are unifying, and as you saw in Yogesh's presentation, we're actually moving all comm staff over onto the foundation to sit under our VP of Strategic Communications, Christy. So next year is a huge year for the recognized global brand, not just because we're making those internal changes, but the reason we're making those internal changes is because of the external pressures and requirements that will be put on us. If we are going to explain and defend why our vision of the way that the internet is delivered, managed, and governed is the right one, we need to do this in a consistent way. We can't do this in an individual programmatic communications way. And we have to have a way of providing not just the program teams, the comms team, and the broader organization with those messages, but also specifically to the leadership and Sally in particular, a clear set of messages, briefing materials, data, evidence, impact stories, etc., that enable us to talk in the way that you saw in the previous video about what's at stake, the way the internet is run, and why we believe we do it in the right way. So the big task next year is pulling together the team into a unified team, making them work well and making them manage the comms activities. When we look through all of the tasks across the ISOC action plan, pretty much almost half of them in some way or another are comms related, whether it's a message that needs to go out, a campaign for advocacy that needs to go out, or an event. Comms is a massive part of what we do and a massive part of the budget we spend across the whole organization. Making that work efficiently, effectively, and again, to achieve more results without necessarily spending more money on it is going to be the task of next year. And this is the way in which we will achieve the main priority of building the recognized global brand. Next slide, please. So you will see some success measures for next year that look more qualitative rather than quantitative. We do also have some success measures around engagement on platforms, etc. But really the success of next year isn't we increased our social media following by 10%, or we did X number of media briefings, or we did, X number of people visiting our website. The success of next year is our ability to tell that collective story well, and to have a comms team that's leading, guiding, and running that process well and effectively. So our ability to deliver on those key messages to the internet society so that everyone talking, including yourselves, are well briefed around how we talk about our work and the value of the work. That in itself will grow the brand, and we have brand recognition and sentiment scores. We will look at measuring this. But also the success is in the anecdotal data as we engage with people. Again, the board member who in the Slack channel yesterday pointed to the fact that individuals they know had come to them talking about the Who Runs the Internet campaign. Some of these things are measurable, some of them are experiential. But we will increase the reach of the most critical internet policies, making sure that we're a trusted resource to support not just our messaging, but the messaging of our partners. And we will amplify the impact of the community. Again, so much of the work is done outside of our SOC, and our ability to communicate that success is as, if not more important than our ability to communicate our own success. So really, there is one measure of success next year, is that you see, you feel, and you understand a unified comms team with unified messages, making it clear what's at stake and what we are doing to deliver on the mission of ISOC in policy, advocacy, and other areas. Onto revenue generation. Next slide, please. So again, huge growth in 2025 that we need to consolidate and deliver on in 2026. We will continue to bring money into the co-funds. Those are increasingly well-oiled machines, and other donors recognize that. We will continue to be a trusted partner for people that want to fund areas around connectivity and safer internet, and we will grow those pots. We will increase and strengthen our ability to engage with those institutions and to work with those. We will continue to do individual donation campaigns. We will continue to build towards a market level individual campaign that we may launch in 2027. But that will tie in closely with the comms team as we understand and sharpen what our overall market messaging is. I don't think we can do a broad-based market level individual donations campaign in a consistent multi-year way until we have really honed our messages around who we are and what we do in a way that allows that to be understandable by people when they see the "why should I donate" button come through to them. So we will work with comms on building that slowly over the year and maybe go bigger in 27. But the big measures are around organizational and corporate funding, and really pressing the button on that in 26, as we discussed a little bit at the end of the last session, and how we bring organizational members in, but also how we increase corporate sponsorships and employee giving as a way of bringing a diversity of donors into the organization. Next slide, please. So the measures here are growing the number of funding partners on our existing co-funds. We want at least 15 new organizational members and corporate funding partners. Again, we say organizational members or corporate funding partners, because as we discussed, there are lots of ways people can begin their engagement with us. We don't want to give them just one choice. As Caleb said, Membership at the lowest level might not be applicable or affordable by people. So we want as many ways as possible to engage. And as Ted was saying, people come to us in lots of different ways to start engaging with ISOC. We want to be able to work with them in whatever way makes sense for them, and then deepen their engagement with us as the relationship grows. But we want at least 15 new organizations to come in at some way that is measurable and contributes in a fiscal way to the way that the Internet Society works. And we want at least 2 new corporate employee giving partnerships. One of the best ways of targeting individual giving is targeting those who work in organizations directly related to the work that we do. So we'll be working strongly, particularly in the digital firms, at understanding how corporate employee giving is a way of bringing individual memberships in. Ted?
So are you measuring that by individual company, or are you measuring it by platform? Because there are obviously these sort of common platforms like Benevity that are used across many different organizations. So is this 2 platforms?
This is 2 platforms, yeah. So we're
Okay.
trying to hit as many organizations as possible via those platforms.
Thanks.
We will also, and I'm very aware that Rambadu is sitting next to me, 2026 will be the year we will be able to accept donations through mobile money platforms as well. So that we can make sure we are truly global in the way that people can support the work of the Internet Society Foundation and what we do. And that, I think, is my last slide. Thank you very much.
Questions or comments for Chris? Okay.
Chris, thanks once again. Not sure if you are aware, is MasterCard currently a funder of ISOC, MasterCard Foundation? Okay, just to say that they have an employee innovation fund currently in review, which are part of, and they're looking at expanding using their employee innovation fund to give. So I put it in the chat. Maybe it's something you want to look at and might be a good fit for the employee giving initiative, the MasterCard Foundation. Happy to have a chat with you later, Chris.
No, that's great. Thank you. We'll follow up on that. Equally, also, if anyone works for an organization that has employee giving and we haven't spoken to you about it, please tell us. Very happily get ISOC on that list.
Could we go back to slide 16 for a moment? This is the slide on brand architecture. And I think you were very clear that you see the primary thing in 2026 as being unifying the comms team and making sure that the messages reinforce each other appropriately. But I noticed in the last part of this is amplify the impact of our community and our collective body of work. And there are a couple of things that could mean, and I was hoping you would unpack it a little bit more.
No, absolutely. So we can unify the comms story across ISOC very easily because we can talk in a more coherent way about the program of giving and programmatic work that we do across the foundation. But as we are saying, increasingly the work is being done by partners. And our ability to tell that story is as if not more important than it is about our own story. So being able to talk about what our directly related partners do in the way that you've seen in some of those videos. As I said, we showed the refugee camp video and we showed the Goats for Bytes video. Both of those programs deeply embedded with 2 strong partners for us, Mwingu Foundation and Computers for Schools. So working to be able to tell that story is really important. Working to surface stories of success from the chapter work is also incredibly important. Our most immediate community of action and practice is the chapter network, and we're looking at ways we can hugely improve the way that story is told. But I think also understanding when crowding in stories from our partners and our other ecosystem members so that we tell a unified story is important as well. Actually, one of the things we've done this week between senior leadership of IETF and ISOC is talk about how the IETF talks about what it does and the impact it has in the world, and started to talk to them about what are the impact stories of the IETF work. How is the thousands of RFCs that exist out there enabling some of the most popular consumer products, the iPhone that's sitting on my desk right now, work. So I think as well as telling our own story, it's also understanding the value of helping tell the stories of the organizations adjacent and partnered to us, as well as those directly working with us on projects and work.
Thank you. I see we have as a guest today, John Nevitt, who's listening to this. And I think one of the things that John's organization has done incredibly well is the .org Impact Awards. And one of the things I think that's very successful about that is it's celebrating other organizations rather than his own. And as I think about what it means to amplify the impact of our community and our collective body of work, I think there may be opportunities here where what we choose to amplify is some other organization who's delivering the internet for everyone. And certainly as we move into some of these communities like the refugee work or the Pacific Islands, there are other people who are or have done incredible work in those areas that isn't our work, but still is important for us to celebrate because it helps people understand the overall importance of the mission. So I think it might be valuable for us to think as we think about amplifying pretty broadly about what community means, that it might not be as narrow as the people that we're funding or that are funding us, but might be much more broadly to the people who are delivering something that's relevant to our mission. And we have had a number of these incredibly inspiring stories. The one with the Truist Foundation, these with the refugee camps, or the Goats for Bites, are recent ones that come to mind. But it's the tip of an iceberg, and I think the important thing that we have to do as a comm strategy is get people aligned to the mission. Because once we have them aligned to the mission, then we can help them either donate to us and help deliver it, or find the appropriate people that are delivering the part that they care about and donate to them. And that sort of community, writ broadly, is going to be especially important in the next year, because there are going to be so many organizations that have done this kind of good work, but don't have the money right now to celebrate it in ways that can help sustain them. And it's going to be a tough year for all of them. And if they're having to choose between comms money and programmatic delivery, that's always very, very difficult. And if there's some way we can help to channel money, not just to partners, but to parts of the community that need it, that might actually have an enormous impact for our mission, even though it may not be very direct for our organization.
No, well noted.
Any other questions or comments for Chris? Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris. We will be moving into closed session for our next presentation. So the recording will stop, and we will return after the closed session for some resolutions. But in the meantime, we will thank everybody who's listened so far. Thanks, everyone, and welcome back to the open portion of the Foundation board meeting. The next item of business will be a couple of resolutions for the board to approve. The first of which is the approval of the action plan, budget, and board designated funds. The resolution reads, resolved that the Internet Society Foundation Board of Trustees approves the 2026 action plan and budget as presented. And are there any questions about this one? May I ask somebody to move the motion then? Thank you, Brian and Funke. Would all those in favor of the resolution please signify by raising your hand? Okay, that's unanimous. Thanks very much. The next resolution says approve the board designated funds for Internet Society Foundation programs. Resolved that the Internet Society Foundation Board of Trustees hereby approves designating a total of $18,500,000 using the remaining balance balances in its reserves for philanthropic programs 2026 awards as outlined below. $9,850,000 to fund its philanthropic programs in skills, research, beyond the net, chapters, IGF, connectivity, and safer internet. $1,050,000 to fund the Opportunities Fund, and $7,600,000 to fund the IETF Administration LLC. Are there any questions on the resolution? Seeing no questions, may I ask someone to move? It looks like Barry and Romano. Thank you both. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. That's once again unanimous. Thanks very much. The next is the approval of the amendments to the investment policy. Victor.
So I'll read the resolution. Whereas via resolution F2023-9, the Board of Trustees approved the amended Internet Society Foundation investment policy. Whereas the Finance Committee is responsible for reviewing and recommending any changes to the investment policy to ensure it remains aligned with current market conditions, legal requirements, and the Internet Society Foundation's objectives. Whereas the Finance Committee has reviewed and recommended proposed revisions to the investment managers, resolved that the Internet Society Foundation Board of Trustees approves the amended Internet Society Foundation investment policy as presented. So I'll be seeking someone to carry the motion. Oh, sorry.
So first you should ask if there are questions.
Oh, any questions first? I apologize. Now I'll be seeking for someone to carry the motion. Ted, and someone the second. Charles, thank you. And all those in favor, approve. Okay, looks like we're unanimous.
Sagarika, did you vote? Yeah.
Yeah, it's our hand. All right, thank you. Motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Again, unanimous. The next is the approval of various foundation governing documents. Sally.
Thank you. I will read the resolution. The first resolution relates to the extraordinary grant investment request policy. Whereas via resolution F2021-16, the Internet Society Foundation Board of Trustees adopted an extraordinary grant investment request policy outlining and authorizing specific actions the executive director could take. Whereas due to the recent restructuring of the executive director role, policy details have been updated. Resolved that the Internet Society Foundation Board of Trustees hereby adopts the amendments to the extraordinary grant investment request policy as presented. Any questions? Somebody move the motion? Barry? I see a second. Caleb? All those in favor? It is unanimous. The second resolution relates to the signature authority and delegation of authority policy. Whereas via resolution F2022-17, the Internet Society Foundation Board of Trustees adopted a signature authority and delegation of authority policy outlining and authorizing specific actions the executive director could take. Whereas due to the recent restructuring of the executive director role, policy details have been updated. Resolved that the Internet Society Foundation Board of Trustees hereby adopts the amendments to the signature authority and delegation of authority policy as presented. Any questions about the resolution? Can somebody move the motion? Maureen? And a second? Victor? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Last one, resolution related to the Foundation Compensation Committee Charter. Whereas the Compensation Committee Charter outlines specific oversight responsibilities in regard to the executive director role, whereas due to the recent restructuring of the executive director role, oversight responsibilities have changed. Resolved that the Internet Society Foundation Board of Trustees hereby adopts the amendments to the Compensation Committee Charter as presented. Any questions? Somebody raise the motion? Caleb? Kathleen is a second. All those in favor? Caleb, are you in favor? Okay. It's unanimous. Back to you, Ted.
Right. The last motion before us today is the approval of the board minutes for Foundation meeting number 33. The resolution reads, whereas the Internet Society Foundation Board of Trustees has reviewed the minutes of the 33rd board meeting as presented, resolved that the minutes of the 33rd meeting of the Internet Society Foundation Board of Trustees are approved. Are there any questions about this? Seeing none, may I ask someone to move the motion? Thank you, Barry. And Maureen seconds. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Once again, unanimous. Thank you very much. This brings us to the close of the formal agenda. Is there any other business for the good of the order? Seeing none, we are adjourned. For those who are following remotely, the Internet Society will return into open session in 1 hour and 10 minutes, which would be 1 o'clock Montreal time. So the open session for the Internet Society will return at that time. Thank you very much.